maybe, bring you guys up to date with some things that have been going on, maybe in the background or people were involved with, but bring it out to the bigger community, find out what people are thinking, what they'd like to see from the cohort, what they'd like to see in future talks, bring you a little update on what the Resource Advisor Subcommittee is doing, and any of the subcommittee members, I see a few of them are on, can help me bring that update, and just go from there. So I guess first, for people who don't know who I am, I will introduce myself. I'm Lynn Gassaway. My day job is Heritage Program Manager for the Lassen National Forest. I'm also Tribal Relations Liaison and our READ Coordinator. What else am I? I helped start this READ cohort, helped start the Fire Art cohort. I'm the chair of the Resource Advisor and WCG Subcommittee, and I do a little bit of fire in the other seasons. I'm also a liaison officer on PNW Team 3, Type 1 Incident Management Team. So, but archaeologist by trade. All right, I saw a question come up. All right, since I only have one screen, I have to go back and forth. That's part of my discombobulation. I apologize. All right, that was just you, Melissa, saying. Bring up discussion issues. I think I'll start off with probably one of the biggest ones for everybody. I will try to share content. I will share this message. Let's see. Can people see this? This is the email that we sent out, that the cohort sent out about hazard pay issues. Can you guys see it? Can somebody tell me verbally whether you can see it?
Yep, you're good, Lynn.
It's visible.
Okay. Thank you. So, some of you might have been affected by this, that there were some teams, some finance sections that were questioning resource advisors getting hazard pay. I guess my first comment is, if that happens to you, fight it. If you are on the line, if you are in the place that firefighters are, scoping out contingency lines, even third level contingency lines, out in front of a fire, you're on a fire line, you're working with firefighters in your PPE, and all of that, and you're within a closure and you're under a delegation of, you're working for an AA, you deserve hazard pay. Just like any other firefighter deserves hazard pay. So, we were lucky enough this year, after at least 4 fires that I know of that this happened on, and 2 or 3 different incident management teams questioning it. It actually went all the way up to the acting director of fire and aviation within the Forest Service. I think it also went all the way up to the top of the NPS fire and maybe BLM fire too. And they all came back saying that resource advisors on the line should be getting hazard pay. So, big part, some people question because we're not on a crew. They get us confused with being resource advisors versus reefs, which is fire line resource advisor. But it's the location that you're working, and not the necessarily what your red card says. So I think the biggest part is what's here. Let's see if I can. I actually can't zoom in on this, sorry. But as a single resource, as those positions, they are ARC and Reef are line qualified. They are allowed to be on the line, and they should be working. That is their primary job, is to be working on the line. So they should be getting hazard pay. And if anybody wants this email again, we can send it out again. But that's sort of the crux of it. We as the Resource Advisors Subcommittee are slowly taking this on. Two, we want to back up what the decision was that happened over the summer and make sure that it's standard operating procedure and we don't have to go through this fight again next season or the season after. And we're going to work through all our different agencies. The subcommittee has members via agency, and so we each can go back to our main agency and take it up the line that way. I don't know if people who are involved with this want to add more to that. I know I'm grazing over it. I saw Cedar was on here. I don't know if Cedar, you want to add anything to it? Or Tom, you were involved too?
No, nothing to add, Lynn.
Yeah, I'll just say I thought it was all resolved now when we got that letter from the Washington office. Once that happened, it kind of all went away as an issue, but it was really a struggle before then.
I guess to actually do one thing to add, Lynn, in the Park Service, at least for the Pacific West region, we were directed to specify in the comment section at the bottom of the CTR for the day, not only what division we were doing, but that we were, describing kind of what we were doing in terms of working on an active fire line, identifying resources of concern on an uncontrolled fire line, advising firefighters, stuff like that. They wanted us to be more specific in that sense. So that could be helpful to other folks in the future.
Yeah, I think that's always really good thing to put on your CTR, on your time. Tom?
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention that's indirectly related, but it's important. This is the time of year now, January, February, March, is get your house in order. Make sure your red card has reef on it for fire line qualified, and then there's no question about hazard pay. One of the things I struggle with is I have folks come in late August and they don't have reed or reef on their red card. Maybe they don't have a red card at all. Maybe they have a red card, but they don't have their pack test. Make sure you get all that done before the season starts. And I think that's your obligation so that when we call you up, everything's in order and there's no headaches. So if people would pay attention to that, I'd appreciate it.
Message. I will say I know at least one fire where it was questioned after the letter came out from the Forest Service, and it was a Forest Service, Park Service fire. So in California. So keeping a copy of that letter from whatever agency, even if you're not a Forest Service person, if you have that letter from the Forest Service, that should help you work with any team's finance people. So keeping that in your back pocket just in case it comes up is always good. Melissa?
I think someone else had their name or hand up first. Oh, it was Tom. I don't know if Tom still has something to share.
Well, the only thing else was Barb asked about the pack test. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you only need moderate to be a reef, or is that not accurate?
So that is another subject I was going to bring up and talk about that. So
okay, we can wait.
We can. Let me just make sure if there are any other questions about hazard pay before I move on to.
Yeah, Lynn, there are a couple. Sorry, there were a couple questions in the chat box. I'm not sure if they've been answered. Let's see here. Could you send it out again? Has this message been shared with the team? I think it was in regards to the hey, or with the teams. Please send it out. We should have a copy in our toolkit for timekeeping.
Yeah, so I don't know whether all the incident management teams have like received that. It did, since it came through the fire system itself, like it went from the acting chief down to the regional FMOs, and then I know the Region 5, our regional FMO sent it out to all the teams, all the California teams, interagency teams. I know in Region 6, I sent it to the team that I work on. And I know somebody, I think Peter brought up that the spring meetings that all the teams have, we haven't had them because of COVID lately, but we've had them virtually. But especially if they're in person again, it's a good way to get that message out to the finance people who are at those meetings. But I think that's also what we're going to try to do as part of the subcommittee, continue to get the word out. But I think all of you can also be a voice for it. If you know a finance section chief that works on your force or your unit, talk to them. You know, anybody, talk to them and just keep that word out that, hey, we're out there doing this hazardous job, and have that conversation.
There was another question. What about the PAC test qualifications? What is needed?
All right, so we'll go into the PAC test part. So, and I meant to bring it up. So currently, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong because I don't have it right up in front of me. So there's ARC, which is actually a line qualified position, but has no PAC test requirement. And there's REEF, Fire Line Resource Advisor, and it has a moderate PAC test requirement. And then there's READ, and does READ currently have a light or no PAC test? Somebody has to correct me on that one.
My understanding for the Forest Service is READ does not need a PAC test.
That's sort of what I was thinking. So with that, for those positions, if those are the only positions that you have on your red card, there is no one can actually make you take a higher level PAC test. There's a lot of legalities with the PAC test level you take, and if you get hurt and all this, and a lot of places will definitely never allow you to, especially the Park Service has been the harshest that I've ever heard about it. You can only take the maximum PAC test for the highest level position you have. And then, so you can, if you have other positions, like a firefighter type 2, that requires an arduous PAC test, and you keep that on your red card, then you can take the arduous PAC test, obviously, because you need it for that position. If you get a resource order to go to a fire, and you are ordered up as a REEF, so we'll go with the REEF with the moderate PAC test, no one can actually ask you to have a PAC test higher than that position. So like if somebody division comes up and goes, what's your work capacity test is the official term, the work capacity test. If somebody says, hey, do you have an arduous work capacity test, but you are there as a REEF, they can't ask you to have a higher PAC test than the position. Nobody can ask you to have more qualifications than the qualifications set up in NWCG, and we're currently in the 310-. We're in the supplement to the 310-1. So they can't actually ask you to have something higher. You can go out and have higher positions and get that pack test and do that. And you can even, you know, be like June and be a smoke jumper and have the even higher physical requirements. It's but on the fire line, you only are required to have what that position has in the qualifications guidelines. The resource subcommittee is working on updating and moving ARC, READ, and REEF out of the supplement and into the official 310-1, which would give it more backing. It'll have higher standards for training. It'll be a more descriptive thing, and we are in the middle of discussing the PAC test and what level we feel that it should be. The group working for the ARC has come down pretty hard that we all feel. I think we're unanimous that it's a moderate PAC test. The REEF we're still in that discussion. And as I'm seeing some of the chats go through, so right now it is, READ has no PAC test, REEF is a moderate PAC test, firefighter type 2 is arduous. ARC is no PAC test. As you look through the other positions, lots of other positions, there's lots of fireline positions that are moderate, things that you might not think are moderate. And I do have, and I will bring it up, the description of the PAC test. Can you see this?
Yep.
So see the physical fitness level? And I'll just read it out. So an arduous, the definition of arduous and why you would need that PAC test level is duties involving field work requiring physical performance calling for an above average endurance and superior conditioning. These duties may include an occasional demand for extraordinarily strenuous activities in emergencies under adverse environmental conditions and over extended periods of time. Requirements include running, walking, climbing, jumping, twisting, bending, and lifting more than 50 pounds. The pace of work typically is set by the emergency situation. So that's arduous. Moderate. Duties involve field work requiring complete control of all physical faculties and may include considerable walking over irregular ground, standing for long periods of time, lifting 25 to 50 pounds, climbing, bending, stooping, squatting, twisting, and reaching. Occasional demands may require for moderately strenuous activities in emergency over long periods. Individuals usually set their own pace. That's moderate. And that's usually the two that we're really talking about is where people are arguing, arduous versus moderate. But then you get light duty, which is a lot of the camp that sometimes go on the field. Duties mainly involve office type work with occasional field activities characterized by light physical exertion, requiring good health. Activities may include climbing stairs, standing, operating a vehicle, or long hours of work, as well as some bending, stooping, or light lifting. Individuals can usually govern the extent and pace of their physical activities. Okay. So I think the thing I always go to is this, for the moderate, is you get to set your own pace. And I think that's really important for reads and reefs, anybody on the fire line, to remember that, we're not required to sit there and follow those crews. And we should be really thinking hard whether we should be there. And the other thing I've always bring up is people like to use, feel that when somebody in operations asks whether you have an arduous pack test, they're using it as a way to judge how much fire experience you have, how experienced you are. And I really don't believe that your pack test level has anything to do with your experience. And in fact, a lot of people I know have the most experience have decided they don't want to do arduous anymore, and they're dropping to moderate, and including myself, who went to moderate for the first time in my career after 23 years of being on the fire line. That we as reeds and arcs and reefs, we all need to learn about fire and have the fire head and understand when and when not to be in a place because of the fire activities. So that's my little soapbox on that one. I know there's lots of different opinions on it. I think the one that we're also brought up is field observers. They are moderate, and they're out there often way up in front. So, yep. So that's where we are. It's still up in the air. We'll have more direction coming as we get the positions moved forward. But currently, they're not. None of the resource advisor positions are arduous, and nobody can ask you to take anything above that if you don't have another qualification. I'll open it up for anybody else. That Melissa, you have your hand up, and then anybody else.
It's not on this topic, so when we're ready to move on to the next topic. Barbara Adams would like, I'm sorry?
Let's stay on this topic and see if there's any other questions and comments. Totally argue against me, disagree with me. Charles?
Yes, I have both reef and reed on my red card, but my forest puts camp only on the reed position because it is technically not a line qualified position.
Yeah, I think since we have reef now, reed has become a default non-fire line position. But every position on a fire can end up on the fire line. There is like if you're just going out there to drop off a lunch, then you don't get hazard pay. That's pretty clear in our regs. But if you're out there all day on the fire line doing fire work, even if you're a reed, you should be able to get hazard pay. I mean, that's where that comes in at that point sometimes too. But
hey, Lynn, this is
you can't. Yeah, I will add one thing. You can switch. You can be ordered as one thing and then switch to another position. Firefighters do it all the time, but because of our issues, it's probably good to document that in a general message form. If you do that, like if you ordered as a reed, but then you end up as a reef, maybe document that in a general message form to. Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, Lynn. Hey, thanks for your comment on reeds need to know when they should be there and when they shouldn't. And I think the past couple of years that's become pretty critical. I've run into situations where there's no medics, there's no EMTs available on entire size of fires, and I've had to tell reeds like, we can't be out there by ourselves. We know what we're doing, but there's just like it's not worth the risk of someone getting hurt, and it's sometimes just better to disengage and find something else to do. And I think that a lot of younger reeds need to think about that when they're out working and we have these crew shortages and staffing shortages. So I just wanted to say thanks for saying that.
Thanks, Jason. Other hands up? Julie?
Yeah, I had a lot of fire experience in the past, and then I got a disability and I couldn't do fire anymore. And I've been trying to assist with fire now for over 4 years. Finally got my READ course this year. But because of COVID and because I'm high risk, my doctor didn't want me being a reef or even a READ in camp. And it seemed like those were the only two choices. And I suggested that because we were so short on reads, that I could, for instance, GPS the contingency fire lines, that kind of thing, and was told no. It was either reef or read. I did get a light WCT, but it's like there's no place for me out there. And I have a lot of knowledge and have been working in wildlife all this time and would really like to help, but I just seem to be stymied at every turn. So I put a comment in the comment box about potentially having an optional light work capacity test for, I don't know, like a super read, but not quite a reef. And yeah, I could pass the moderate. My doctor didn't want me doing prescribed burning, and I wanted to do prescribed burn crew because that's what my fire experience was in, mostly fire research and fire use. But I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how I fit into this very rigid system, and I would like some feedback. Thanks.
Because one thing is that I think we're going to be going, this last 2 fire season shows that we can do a lot of virtual stuff as reads and reefs, or not reefs, I guess, but as resource advisors and technical specialists. I've done a full lead read as virtually, and I've had reads and arts virtually, and it helps a lot with paperwork and having everything organized and stuff that you can't really do when you're on the line. So I think there is lots of opportunities out there. We just have to be creative. I also find that it's not so, our process is so personnel based. Sometimes, like, one finance chief can stop somebody from getting hazard pays. One operations person can bring up the issue of a pack test, and that stops everybody from going on the line. So sometimes I think it's a lot of individual based that we just have to work through those individuals. So I would just say keep trying. That's my first thing, is just keep trying and work with your local people, at least for that virtual part, and keep getting the word out that you want to help. And sometime, hopefully, we'll find a place for you. I think there is a place.
Yeah, my thing was also that I can't work those 16-hour days. And basically that's what I was told. We don't want you if you can't work 16-hour days. We don't even want you out there, for instance, checking on, because my specialty is wildlife now, for instance, checking on territories ahead of time, assisting with that kind of making sure that we don't put contingency lines smack through the middle of our nest stands, that kind of thing. And also that they be included, that those contingency fire lines be included in our suppression repair plans. A lot of times they're surprised because there was no reef out there when they were done, and they aren't even mapped. So I want to get into the field. I don't want to necessarily do virtual unless it would be potentially for another forest. I want to get out on my own forest into those closure areas, but not directly on the fire line.
I think you just have to talk to your people and work on it, because I've definitely worked with people and seen even lead reads who are only working 8-hour days. And it depends on what's going on with the fire. There's lots of different things, but I think just keep working on it and working on those people to to show that. I think there is a place for you, but it just might take some people want, in some situations, need certain things, and sometimes they don't. So there will be a time and a place. I saw a bunch of comments. There's still another hand up.
Yeah, this is Scott. I have my hand up. So I'm Scott Footle, and I'm the lead read on the Boise National Forest. Been a read for, I don't know, 15 years. But there were a couple of comments in there that I found concerning. One was where somebody was saying that divisions were not allowing reefs to go to certain places, and if you're line qualified, that division, they can make recommendations, but they don't always have the ability to tell you where you can and can't go. We had that happen this year in Washington on a fire. A division told me I couldn't go somewhere, and he said I didn't have the quals to go into that area. He had no idea what my quals were. So that became a point where I involved ops to make it clear that I can go where I need to go on the fire, especially since I'm a single resource and have been for 10 plus years. Secondly, we work for the agency administrator, not ops. So just kind of that. And also concerning is that, you know, if you're a lead read and you don't have a pack test, and you don't have a line position on your card, you really do need to be escorted when you're on the fire line. I think that's where a lot of this conflict is coming between teams and divisions and ops and resource advisors, is that you're getting people that do not have line quals going into places they shouldn't, and then they're restricting people with line quals from going where they should be able to go.
Yeah. I will say, yeah, division can't really. You should be bringing it up with ops and through the AA if divisions are saying you can't go somewhere, and you should be talking to them about, like, well, why are you saying it? I mean, there's not lines to be drawn, but there's questions to be asked. One, they probably do have a concern, and you should, then that's rightfully so. They don't want anybody hurt. They don't want you hurt, but you can discuss that. Like, okay, well, where on your division is it safe, and what are your concerns? Is it that I don't have LCES set up, and can I help here, you know, improve where you have your LCES? I mean, that's the biggest thing for me, is when they're saying you need to be able to come back and go how you are acting safe. And just by saying, oh, I'm line qualified and I can go on the line, is not actually being safe. You should have LCES set up. You have to have, you know, who's your lookout? A lot of times as an individual, we don't have a lookout. So we do need to be talking to the division about where the lookouts are, and make sure those are set up, and that people know where we are and know where the fire is. And then communication, that we're in communication with all those crews that are out there, and prove that to them. And then your escape routes and your safety zones, and talk to them about those kind of things. Like, hey, I have this all set up. I was out here yesterday. I know where the safety zones are. I know this. What are your concerns? And if they still don't want you there, like, well, I'm going to hang out with you all day then. Is that okay with you? Because I need to be able to, my job is to advise you as to what the resource concerns are on your division. And let's talk to, and by me being with you, I can do my job. I don't have to be on the line, but I need to be able to communicate with you about where your crew, and find out where your crews are and where they are in relationship to my resources at risk. So,
right,
how can I work with you?
Have all that in place, and
you
know what you're doing. You should have the access. What we were seeing this year and last year was that they just didn't want reefs on their division. And they were trying to use safety is a way to restrict that access for whatever reason. I don't know what their background was and why they had those issues, but
No,
that's
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. I'm just trying to give people who aren't as experienced some talking points, some ways to still accomplish your job and still do it. I also found like once you stay like to a lot of divisions who like don't want you there at all, and that's just because they don't want the bothersome of you. That if you say, well, I'm going to stick with you all day, or can I stick with you? Then they're like, oh, and they start letting you go. But yeah, but bring it up, and if you got to bring it all the way up to your AA, your forest soup, or your park superintendent, and get them to talk to the IC and get that released, because there should be a good conversation about what is the hazard that is keeping you from being out there, and work with them. What else? I still see a hand up.
Hey, Lynn,
Peter.
Pete Irvin.
Go.
Yeah, I just throw in that, those ops folks have a lot going on, and it could be as simple as their experience with READ is READ, meaning non-fire line. And they may not know that there's such a thing as a READ as compared to a READ, because it's relatively new. So it's an opportunity to say, hey, just want to make sure you're aware there's two different positions on my red card. One is reef, means I'm moderate. One is read. And moderate's kind of like being a line safety or an F band. I can get out here. So may not be ill intent always. It may be operational tempo and background.
Yeah. And it may be they took everybody off the line, all the crews off the line, and they don't want you to be the only person out there in a really bad spot.
Yeah, there's definitely, times when nobody should be on certain places on certain divisions, regardless of your quals. And it's the div soup that makes that call.
Yep. So, yeah, I think the lead read comment too that you brought up, Scott, was, yeah, some of us leads are not qualified for the line, and we need to make sure that we're getting escorted if we're going out there. And I mean, but that's for anybody. If you don't have the qualifications, don't put yourself in a bad spot. We all represent this part of this too is, there's a long history of good and bad between reads and ops and fire and everybody else, and it's 30 years of it, and we're still fighting some of the fights that I fought 20 years ago. And so just remember that if you have a bad day with somebody, they're gonna remember that the next time they see a reed or a reef. And so that relationships, if you have a bad day, maybe try to mend it. We are going to have to fight sometimes for what we want. That's how we got, at least as far as we've gotten now. But we've also gotten here from really good relationships. So just remember that same way we think of, we have really bad days with ops and we hate that ops or divis or whoever, that firefighter. I see a hand coming up. I don't know who.
Yeah, just simple question. What is LCES?
It's a shorthand for the safety measures that you should have in place. It's the shorthand for the 10 and 18. It's L is lookout, somebody that has you and the fire in their view and can tell you when the fire is coming into a bad position for you. C is communications. So you're in communications with the crews around you and lookout and everybody that you need to be in communications with. E, escape route. You know how you're getting out. And you have it timed and you know how long it's going to take. So when that fire gets in the bad position, you have more than one, so that you don't have them cut off. And S, safety zones. So you know where you're running to with that escape route. And safety zones are T-shirts and Tevas. It's not where you will deploy your shelter. It is where you would be safe from the fire. And you can be there in T-shirts and Tevas. That's what I was taught. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right. Okay, I see lots of comments coming in. But anything else about, that was pack test level. So we've done hazard bay and pack test level. Anything else to cover for this? James, do you still have a question? Is that lingering hand? I think it is a lingering hand. Okay, I really would like to open this up. I know, especially we only have, I guess, 15 minutes left. What would you all like to see us talk about in future meetings? What would you like to have a half an hour talk about? And what else can this READ cohort do to help the READ community?
One thing I'd like to see us talk more about, and forgive me if you've done it in the last year and I just missed out on it, and that is the timber show that some of these larger fires are becoming, and how we fit into that. It just gets really complicated. There's so much politics and a discussion about how the READs can contribute to that in a meaningful way would be useful.
Wow. Yeah, we have not talked about that. I'll say it's a loaded question, or a loaded issue, especially depending on what agency you work for. And I've definitely seen, it's a good topic, yes. Not sure how to tackle it. I think it's gonna, at least for the Forest Service, I feel the winds are changing and that we actually might really see some legislated or CE, NEPA level changes to allow a lot more of roadside hazard abatement during repair. But yeah, okay, great. It is, Lindsay.
Morning. Thanks so much for putting this together, and good to see you, Lynn. I know we had kind of talked about this over the summer, but it has been a topic that all of the National Scenic and Historic Trails administrators have been talking about since the Dixie, and a lot of the fires that crossed onto and impacted the Pacific Crest Trail this year. Would love to have an opportunity to chat about National Scenic and Historic Trails and how they may be impacted in fires. I'm taking the lead for all of the trail administrators on that. But we are trying to start talking about what kind of information and training would be really useful for resource advisors to get on those topics. So I guess just be looking out for emails from me, Lynn, but would love to have a half an hour on that at some point before the next fire season. Thanks.
Yeah, just get a hold of me and we'll just figure out what month works best for you. Cool. All right, somebody else has their hand up.
Yeah, Lynn, that's me. Just for the topics coming in, I've got a few new folks that are coming in looking at Read. It's kind of easy to gloss over, but for them to get assignments, especially when they're trying to train up, for some of the lead reads, just talking about kind of guiding them into how they can get assignments as a trainee and early experience, especially on some of the larger fires, working directly for specific divisions versus working on your smaller type 2s and stuff, working on their own. And then I always enjoy the discussions when we start talking about what we can do as reads, moving into fire suppression and then working with the bear, since a lot of us kind of dual hat on some fires and move directly into bear too. Those I think are always good.
Yeah, that's really good. That does bring me up, remind me of something else that I just want to bring up. And we had the coordinators of the cohort, the quasi leaders, we had a big discussion about that, our use as getting assignments and a need for people looking for reads on fires, and how that worked this last summer and getting that word out. And there were a lot of problems and things with the way it happened last year. So we are going to make changes in the way we did that, and we're going to ask a lot more for like that people have put in an order through ordering before the cohort puts the word out, and the contact information and of who really they should be contacting is correct and stuff. So we'll put that in writing and put an SOP of how we'll work it out. But just so you all know, we're going to change it a little bit. We had a lot of problems last year. Jason?
Hey, Lynn, I was just thinking of for a future cohort call. Maybe we could have one that can just go over like the 8 line. Last year, I had responded to a couple medical incidents on the Monument Fire, and one of the wilderness reads responded to a pretty critical incident where the medic himself was hurt out on a fire. And one thing that came out of that was a lot of the non-fire people didn't quite know what the 8 line was and how to use it. And I think it's just something that everyone should know instinctively, but if their primary position isn't fire, it's not something that's covered a lot.
That's great. Yeah, at one point on the Dixie, late into the Dixie in October, so like 3-4 months into the Dixie, one of the team's safeties gave a whole 8-line presentation to all the reads. It was really good, and it was very helpful. So I like that. Yep. Okay. What else? I see a bunch of repair stuff. We did just have a repair. Martin gave a really good repair last month, and it is recorded and on the cohort Google Drive. So I will tell everybody that the Google Drive, which you can get, I'll put it in the chat too, but it's just tinyurl.com at new read cohort. There's a folder in there that has all the recordings and notes of all the meetings that we ever took recordings and notes at, which isn't all of them, but a lot of them. So there's a couple we've done on repair, a couple we've done on equipment that were recorded, and the PowerPoints are up there. So take a look at that for the back stuff. Jason, do you have another question or another comment?
No, I'm sorry. My connection is so bad that when I click, it freezes, and then it clicks when the mouse is somewhere else. So.
Okay. Right. I'm sort of reading some of the chats. Fire behavior. I think that's a really good one. I know we're gonna get some GIS. I can talk about what we do have planned. A couple we have planned. Pre-planning. I think that's going to be our next one. Pre-planning, pre-season planning for fires for reeds. We're going to get retardant. Talk about retardant. We're going to get GIS. What else? Did we plan something else? Oh, we're trying to plan one about tribal relations. And I think that's what we got, plus what people have just brought up, and I'll look in the chat and get more. What else? Anything else you would like to see from the cohort? Any big subjects that we can help push and wilderness? Okay, I'm adding wilderness, Pete.
Thanks,
James.
Lynn, and I will just say that I'm not the only person that put that in the chat today, so glad to see that.
No.
Thanks.
Yes, I saw the James.
Hey, I did attend that suppression repair one we had earlier this year, and it was good. I still felt like the back half of it was missing, and that is particularly those of us who travel for fire. You know, most of us know what good suppression repair looks like on our own corner of the world. It's more challenging when you go to the Rockies when you're from the Oregon coast. So I felt like the back half of that, and that would be the monitoring, or the monitoring results. Even a short discussion, or if anybody out there in the reed world is doing monitoring of suppression repair post-fire, if they'd share that with the group. That could be a topic, or it could just be a resource out there. So when we go to environments we're not familiar with, we have some idea whether or not we're actually being effective, and we're not just blindly following the instructions the local forest gives out, which we do, but it'd be nice to have that, a little more confidence there.
Yeah, that's a great topic. I will make a comment. Years ago, I was assigned to a group where we were pulling together all the monitoring for post-fire and different subjects, and monitoring of effectiveness of repair was desperately lacking. And there was a push to have a repair catalog, sort of the way the Bear catalog, and have a repair catalog, but it sort of fell on its face and never got completed. So that's a good topic. It's a great topic. All right. What else? Got 4 minutes left. Anybody else want to share anything from the season? Okay. With quietness, I fill in. People fill in the quietness, so I'm filling in the quietness. I just want to put a shout out there to remember for everyone. Remember your mental health, and us as a reed community. Look after each other. Check in with people you worked with this summer. See how they're doing. And tell them you're there. It was a hard year. It's been a hard couple of years, and I don't think it's going to get better. We're going to have big fires. We're going to have communities affected. We're going to have our own communities affected. We're going to see our own friends' communities affected. So please look out for each other. It's okay to admit that this stuff hurts, and get help if you need it. Otherwise, so I don't want to end it on a sad note. So love you guys. Keep up the hard work. Keep up the good work. We'll continue to be here to support you guys and get more training and information out there. So thank you all.
Thank you, Lynn, for organizing this.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lynn. We appreciate everything you do.